Story. Sunset Overdrive takes place in the world of Sunset City in the year 2027. Fisco is releasing its latest energy drink and decides to give its home city the first taste. The world quickly gets infected as they realize that drinking overcharged delirium XT means that you're turned into a mutant. The story sees you trying to escape Sunset City, which has been locked down due to the infestation of mutants. You'll meet a ton of people along the way who are facing the same scenario. Little trinkets of backstory details are provided by collecting cell phones. Ultimately, I feel the story ends up being incredibly cliché and incredibly forced. In the past, I've always gotten really involved in Insomniac's wonderful character development and pacing, but unfortunately Sunset Overdrive seems to fall a bit flat in this regard. Initially, I felt that the premise could have really been interesting, but bland characters and incredibly shallow humor stopped me caring for the story about halfway through the game. Presentation. Sunset Overdrive continues the very colourful and over-stylized nature that Insomniac games are known for. It is one of the most vibrant colours available on Xbox One, and you'll never get tired of the sharp visuals. Visually, the game is very consistent across all environments, enemies, weapons, and the main characters. You definitely won't mistake this as anything other than an Insomniac game from the onset, which is a huge positive for fans of the developers and Xbox newcomers alike. The game runs at 900p at 30 FPS, which some may look down at, however the game remains incredibly smooth at all times. A huge number of enemies can often appear on screen at once, as well as a number of effects and explosions, and I can't recall a time where the game's frame rate ever dropped or slowed down at all. Upbeat music is played throughout the entire game, which sets the tone for the incredibly fast gameplay. Gameplay. As soon as I saw the announcement for Sunset Overdrive, I was excited. Insomniac games have been able to create some of the best action platformers across gaming generations. Their games are full of character, over-stylized with extremely tight controls, crazy weapons, and a ton of humor to back it up. Sunset Overdrive is all about traversal. Ratchet & Clank has always had various grinding sections that break up gameplay, but Sunset Overdrive has built on this mechanic and created the whole game around that central idea. You're able to grind on top of railings, grind under railings, bounce on a number of different objects, vault over items, and wall run. There is a steep learning curve to the amount of traversal techniques. Initially, the game might feel clunky as you miss time jumps and fall short of the next railing, but once you get the hang of it, it feels incredibly fluid. The game rewards you for perfect timing. For instance, if you hit A at the right time when bouncing, you'll get an extra speed boost, which makes it easier to get to your next grind. When grinding, you're able to hit right bumper to initiate a small speed boost, or hold left trigger to slow down if you want to take out some OD on your way through. Amps are abilities which can be purchased by spending various collectibles that can be found in the game. Hero amps usually add a special effect to traversal, and you're able to add 2 amps to this designated slot. Melee amps add a special effect to your melee attack, such as a fire attack. Dive bomb amps obviously affects your dive bomb. Epic amp is the most powerful, which creates extremely effective attacks such as explosions from bouncing. Each amp can be upgraded once to further enhance its effect. Insomniac games have always been known for their over-the-top arsenal of weapons, reinventing the wheel across the Ratchet & Clank and Resistance franchises. But whilst the weapons fit the world of Sunset Overdrive well, it's definitely not the most creative use of weapons. Weapons are unlocked throughout the game and can be purchased using overcharge cans. Weapons are upgraded as you use them, and each one has 5 different levels. For the most part, upgrades increase ammo and damage capacity. I wish that Insomniac went a step further, as they have in previous games, and changed the actual characteristics of the weapons as they are upgraded. For those that want even more customization, weapon amps can be applied, which add a small effect like stunning enemies or giving you the chance of having the enemy explode. Overdrives are the last form of upgrades that can be used in the game. There are a ton of them in the game and are unlocked by using badges. There are 12 badges and are unlocked for doing things like meleeing your enemy, bouncing, grinding, or using a particular weapon type. Overdrives are what really customize your character in order to maximize your playstyle. You're able to equip 6 at once and further upgrade them using more badges. You're able to alter things like how much damage your melee attack does, or assign a certain weapon type more ammo. Traps are used most exclusively in Night Defense in both single player and multiplayer, and are used in a number of ways to kill swarms of mutants. They can be placed strategically, and it can ensure that the enemies never enter your base. There are limited in how many you can place by energy, and this energy can be regathered by removing the trap. These are extremely novel, and it's cool to watch how they dispose of the mutants. You may have already noticed, but Sunset Overdrive has a ton of customization, and I'll be the first to admit that it can be completely overwhelming and confusing at first. Upon pressing start for the first time, it can be completely confusing with just how many upgrade options there are. Rest assured that throughout the first few hours, each thing will be explained to you, and it will start to make sense. Once it does, you'll realize just how much you're able to customize your playstyle. Enemies have always been my favorite part of Insomniac games. They have the ability to create out-of-this-world enemy types that I couldn't have imagined. Sunset Overdrive does not disappoint in this department. There are three main groups of enemies that you'll come across whilst progressing through the game: the mutants, Fiscobots, and Scabs. It doesn't stop there though, as there are many different types of enemies within these three groups. The game is always introducing a new enemy, and different enemies are weaker against certain weapons. This keeps you having to rethink your strategy, and really keeps you on your toes. There are a number of additional quests and challenges throughout the game to keep you on your toes. Quests are side missions which usually flesh out characters. Completing them usually gives you overcharge, cash, or other special items. Challenges are optional missions that test how quickly you can traverse through a certain environment, or destroy a number of enemies. Gold medals are your aim, and will net you in the largest number of cash. Leaderboards are also featured for just about everything in the game, so you can see how you can compare to your friends. Since the game was announced, the developers have been focusing heavily on the multiplayer aspects of the game. Chaos Squad is the multiplayer mode and can be played by 2 to 8 people. Gamers will take part in a number of challenges that can be anything from delivering supplies or defeating a certain number of enemies. At the end of the series of missions, players will take face in night defense in order to defeat waves of enemies. You're then rewarded with a range of cash, clothing, and overcharge. Sunset Overdrive as a whole is a fun experience, but ultimately feels like it's lacking a certain something. Its direction feels a little bit lost, and I'm not quite sure who the game is for. The game feels quite easy for the majority, and dying has almost no consequence. Story missions are by far the worst part of the game. When they have you killing enemies, they're extremely satisfying, but when you're delivering things from one side of the map to the other, the game feels like nothing but a chore. Conclusion. Sunset Overdrive is a success for Microsoft. It brings forward one of PlayStation's most celebrated developers, who have delivered a game that only Insomniac could create. The game is full of creative brilliance, from everything to its enemies to the insane arsenal of weapons. Customization goes beyond any game that I've ever played. Multiplayer is the skeleton of something that has the potential to become brilliant in the future. I feel that almost anybody will get initial enjoyment from the game. However, it's not clear to me how long that enjoyment will last. Ultimately, some bland story missions and a lack of punishment may turn some gamers away.